Hey, what's going on? This is Mike, and today in this video, I want to apologize. All right, so I want to apologize, but I also want to use this as an opportunity to share a message. So I would love for you to stay until the end of this video. It'll only be a couple minutes. For those that know me, know that I don't sit here and talk for 5 hours. I'm gonna try to be as brief as possible. All right, so a couple days ago, I made a post and it said adults who are struggling but have no kids are weird, or is weird. And then it's like, TF you out here doing, like, basically what the fuck are you out here doing, right? So the post wasn't made by me. The post was made by someone else. The message behind the post, because I know that some people misinterpreted it, but it's essentially, the undertone is like, as an adult, how could you be struggling if you don't have kids, right? It's like, what else could you be doing? And so the first big thing, I want to apologize, because there are plenty of adults out here who are in situations where they're struggling and they don't have kids, for a multitude of reasons. Community, their parents, family dynamics. There are people who have been injured, people who were injured, and like there's certain types of health conditions that they have. So I know that there are other reasons to struggle outside of kids. So I want to apologize about that. Now, inside of the comments, I noticed that there was this very big discrepancy between people who have kids. Like, the people who have kids were kind of like, they were laughing at it because it was there was a humorous undertone to it. And then there were people who didn't have kids who were like, this is offensive and blah blah blah. So the message that I want to give is that there's when it comes to the results that we get in terms of our financial situation, economic situation, physical situation, like whatever it is, many of it is sort of an accumulation of the decisions we make. And sometimes when you look back, hindsight 2020, there's always a day or a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like, I could have made better decisions, or I should not have taken that thing for granted. And so let me speak on that for a second, right? I remember the days, well, before I say this, I have a 5-year-old and I have a newborn. Okay, 5-year-old and a newborn. I'm actually driving. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving from dropping him off to school, about 40 minutes away from where I reside, and now I'm heading back to go and work. I remember the days when I didn't have to wake up early for very much at all. I remember the days when there wasn't a newborn crying in the middle of the night. I remember the days when I had the freedom to go out whenever I wanted. Go out, do anything. I remember the days when I was able to not have to be home in the evening time, or be home because I didn't have kids, right? And many of you remember these days, right? And during those days, you look at your time and you say, I have so much of it. So oftentimes what happens is you don't put too much effort towards building a skill, or creating a product, or building a business, or establishing some framework so that you're good later on. Sometimes in your mind you're thinking, well, this condition that I'm in makes me comfortable, so I'm good. You know what it's like? It's very similar to, do you remember the days where you get sick? Like, let's say you get a cold or the flu, or you even get, something, like, let's say you got COVID. I remember when you get sick and you're in the thick of it, like you're in the middle of the sickness, in your head, you're like, oh my gosh, how much stuff there's so much stuff I could do if only I wasn't sick. Like there's certain people that they go through health conditions and they're like, man, if only I didn't, I didn't break my arm, or if only I didn't have this condition. And you start to look back and you're like, man, I had so much time before this happened to do certain things. But you know what? The time that was there, I took for granted. So don't take some of this for granted, okay? Now, another thing that I want to say is, when you look at what you do or what you don't do, just know that there is a cost, and then there's an opportunity cost to the things you do and you don't do, okay? For those of you who may not currently have, kids at home, right? For every day that goes by that is going by, one day you will have kids. There's an opportunity cost to you not doing certain things that you should be doing now, okay? You need to identify what that cost is. Otherwise, later on, the only thing that you can accept is circumstances. There are expenses that come with children. You're going to be paying for different things. That extra $1,000 that you're spending right now on eating out is most likely going to be going towards daycare bills. That extra $1,000 that you're spending on clothing may go to daycare bills, or may go to extra food, or may go to something else that your child needs. The time that you otherwise were spending just watching Netflix, you're not going to have that later on to build businesses. It's going to be tough. So, and you know what? I'll speak to my own testament. I'll come back to my own testament, right? Like, right now, I have a newborn, and in the evening time, I remember the days when I had a little bit more freedom to be able to go to my office space and record and create my course and do all that. But you know what? I took time for granted. This time is time. We'll talk later. We'll talk later. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you are taking every moment for what it is, and you understand that there's a cost to not doing what you have to do. So I'm saying all of that to say this: whether you have kids or not, there's always going to be a day that will come when you're not able to do what you can do now. Okay, I'm going to say that again. There will be a day when you cannot do what you can currently do now. Okay? Do not take this time for granted. So again, I want to apologize to a lot of the people who may be struggling. There are people on my timeline who I know are struggling, and it's not because of kids. It's not because of kids, and it's not because they're lazy. There's just a circumstance that they fell into, and they're struggling because of it. But I want to tell all of you who may be in a position right now of just comfort. You might not be totally struggling, but you're not in a desirable state right now. You have things that you need to do. You need to do it. But because you might not have a dependent mouth to feed, or because you don't have a baby, or because you don't have kids, because you don't have that, you're like, oh, well, you know what? I have time. Don't act as though you don't. Do you know how different your decisions would be or are when you feel that you don't have time? You know how different decisions are with people who have terminal diseases? They make very different decisions. So act as though you don't have time. Plan as though you don't have to. The other day, I did a video on it's called Parkinson's Law. And the law essentially states that the work expands to the time that you're given to do it. Work expands to the time that you're given to do it. So if you say, hey, I have to do something, or if you're given a deadline of next week, oftentimes your mind, and it's not synonymous with procrastination. It's just how our minds work in terms of how we tend to prioritize things. what we do, we start to shift what has to happen closer to when that deadline is. We're given a week. It takes us a week to do it. It takes a week to do it. Give yourself an hour to do the same thing. It'll still get done. So Parkinson's law, for most things, applies. Okay, so again, if you're, I think I'm at minute 7, 8, whatever. If you were offended by the post, again, I apologize. I understand that there's plenty of people out here that are struggling, and it's not because they're lazy, and it's not, just because they don't have kids doesn't mean that they have no merit to struggle. I totally understand that. My message, the apology is to those people who are struggling, who, it's not because of kids. My message is to those of you who may have kids or don't have kids, but you know that there's something that you need to be doing right now. You know that there's something that you need to be building. You know that there's something that you need to become more responsible with so that you can be better off in the future. You will have no excuses if you sat through this video, and mind you, I know there's going to be a very small percentage of people who sit through this video. And you know why? Because the majority of people nowadays have ADD. You can't even finish a YouTube video anymore because our minds are all over the place. Like we're consuming something all over the place, and now we sit back and we say, man, like, why is this person better off than me? Well, because they were able to not take their time for granted. They were able to invest their time into things and their energy into things and their money into things so that they can avoid the struggle later. Do what you can now to avoid the struggle. Don't forget the struggle. Don't think it's not there. Don't think it's merited, but do what you can to avoid it later.